Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark of the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1944 mystery thriller film noir, Laura.
If you come a little bit closer, my boy, I can just crack your skull with my stick.
Whoa, hold on. There's no need for violence. We can back up a little bit here. I'm reviewing all the movies that have 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll give them all a score of 1 to 10. After I score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at 1944 with Laura. So this movie won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography for a black and white movie. Like I said, it has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and a 90% fresh rating from the audience. It stars Jean Tierney as Laura Hunt, Clifton Webb as Waldo Lydecker, Dana Andrews as Detective Lieutenant Mark McPherson, and Vincent Price as Shelby Carpenter. So this movie, when it starts out, we are in the home of Waldo Lydecker. He is a very wealthy person who collects all sorts of different arts and, different very rare pieces of furniture. One of these rare pieces of furniture is a grandfather clock, which he mentions in the beginning of the movie that there's only 2 of these type of grandfather clocks in the world, and the other one is at Laura Hunt's apartment, which he gave it to her. So he owns the only 2 of these grandfather clocks ever made. So the detective Lieutenant Mark McPherson, is going through Dr. Lydecker's kind of home. He's just looking at different things, and Waldo Lydecker is in the bathtub, and he calls him in, and he says, "Watch what you're doing with my things. Those things are priceless." So they meet each other. Dr. Mark McPherson lets Lydecker know that he's there. He's investigating the death of Laura Hunt. She was killed by a buckshot shotgun to the face. I guess someone just kind of entered her house quickly, saw her at the door, shot and killed her. So he is investigating this occurrence. Waldo Lydecker was very good friends with Laura Hunt. He works he really got her start in the advertising business. She saw him in a restaurant, and she approached him, and she said, very few people would have the courage to approach you, but I have this advertising firm that I'm working for, and it would just be great for my career if you would endorse this pen that we use. You could say that, because he's a writer, you could say that you use this pen for writing. And he says, "Woman, I'm eating my lunch. This is way more important than your career. Plus, I never use pens. I use like one of those feather things. So no, I'm not going to endorse your pen. And how dare you interrupt my lunch?"
Will you kindly continue this character analysis elsewhere? You begin to bore me.
So she kind of, goes her separate ways, and then he feels bad about this because he kind of has an attraction to Laura, and he decides to go to her business, to her advertising agency, and he says, "Look, I apologize. I was a little short with you, and for reasons I don't want to mention or tell anyone, I would love to endorse your pen."
And now, for reasons which are too embarrassing to mention, I'd like to endorse that pen.
Mr. Lydecker, thank you.
So he ends up using his connections through his career, through his writing career. He's, like I said, he's really famous and he's really rich, to really jumpstart her advertising career, and she becomes like a really big advertising executive. So as Mark McPherson is interviewing people, Waldo Lydecker says, "Hey, can I go with you to and watch you interview these people?" And he says, McPherson says, "Why would you want to do that?" And he says, "Because I'm a writer and I want to see what these people's reactions are when you say that you're investigating them. I want to see their real human emotions, so maybe I could use this one day in my writing."
Mind if I go with you?
What for?
Murder is my favorite crime. I write about it regularly.
And Lieutenant McPherson says, "Sure, why not? You can come with me." So then they go and interview this really rich woman who is, somehow associated with a man named Shelby Carpenter. So Shelby Carpenter also has sort of a relationship with Laura Hunt. We later learn that they are actually engaged. But this female that he is interviewing, she kind of maybe has a crush on Shelby. So maybe this is like a jilted lover who is kind of like the third wheel, who wanted to be with Shelby but couldn't be with Shelby because he was engaged.
Did you approve of Miss Hunt's coming marriage to Mr. Carpenter?
Why? Shouldn't I approve?
I don't know. What is your relationship with Mr. Carpenter?
To Laura, so maybe she killed Laura just so she could be with Shelby herself. So he's interviewing her, and then lastly he'll interview the maid of Laura Hunt. The maid is absolutely distraught about what happened. She said, "I would have gladly done her laundry and done her dishes and cooking, and she didn't even have to pay me. I would have just done everything for her. I loved Laura Hunt so much."
You don't think I done it? I know you cops get crazy notions. But if you got any notion concerning me, ask anyone. Anyone who ever come to this house.
And that's kind of a theme from everyone that he interviews. So Waldo Lydecker, they just had sort of a friendly relationship. He wanted it to go farther. He wanted to be in a relationship with her, but she never really wanted that from him. But he only has really awesome and amazing things to say about Laura, how beautiful she was, how great she was, how everyone loved her. When the interview Shelby only has great things to say about her. She's this wonderful woman. Everyone loved her. I loved her. I don't know who could have ever not liked her. And then, of course, the maid. The maid is absolutely over the moon with her, loves her as a boss, loves her as a person, and is totally distraught by her death. So now we know who the main players in this are. Lieutenant McPherson starts reading Laura's diary, starts reading letters that were sent to her. He goes to her house. He sees a painting of her over the mantle, and for these reasons, he feels like he's really getting to know her as a person. Everyone really has great things to say about her, and he eventually starts falling in love with this woman who he is investigating her death. So he starts falling in love with her. He starts spending time at her apartment. He'll spend the night at her apartment just to be there. And then Waldo Lydecker comes to the apartment one day and says isn't this a little weird? That you are spending nights here, that you're here all the time. Are you falling in love with her like everyone else has? Because it seems like you are.
McPherson, did it ever strike you that you're acting very strangely? It's a wonder you don't come here like a suitor with roses and a box of candy.
So McPherson just kind of blows this off, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not falling in love with her, but even though he really is falling in love with her. So he eventually spends another night at her house, and then lo and behold, she walks through the door. She's not dead, she's alive, and she comes through the door and she says, "Why are you in my house? I'm going to call the police." And then Mark McPherson says, "I am the police." Now, at first, I thought that maybe this was just a dream that he was having because, like I said, he is falling in love with her and he wants to be with her. So maybe he fell asleep and he's having a dream that she actually comes back into his life. But no, she's actually there. It took me a while of watching this, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes as this was going on. I said, okay, so enough time has passed to where I don't think this is a dream anymore.
What are you doing here? If you don't get out at once, I'm going to call the police.
You are Laura Hunt, aren't you?
So she does walk through the door. They kind of discuss with each other where she's been, what she's been doing. She went to a cabin that she had, and she said she just wanted to get away from everyone and away from everything. And at the cabin, she doesn't have any newspaper. She doesn't get any type of contact from anyone. So she had no idea it was on the front of the newspaper that she was killed, and she had no idea that this happened. And then as they start to talk, they deduce that the person who was actually killed was someone named Diane Redfern, who was in her apartment, and she looks a great deal like Lauren Hunt. So they have the same height, the same body type. So, and she was probably in Laura's clothes. And the person who killed Diane thought they were killing Laura. So they killed the wrong person. One thing I forgot to mention was that in the investigation of Shelby, they asked Shelby, the investigator asked Shelby if he had a key or if anyone had a key to her room. Shelby said no, I don't think anyone had a key to the room, but I know that she usually keeps a key in one of her dining room drawers. So they go to her apartment. Of course, Waldo is following because he wants to gauge everyone's reaction, and we find out that he opens the drawer, there's a key. But the Detective McPherson said, I saw the police inventory and that key wasn't there. So you just planted that key there right now, didn't you? And Shelby says, yes, I had the key on me. I planted it. McPherson's like, well, why did you do that? He said, well, I didn't want to give you the key while Waldo was here. I don't want to go through why I didn't want to, but I didn't want to just hand you the key to let you know that I had it while Waldo was here.
It's here, it is. I knew there must be one around somewhere.
The police are very fussy about their inventories. That key isn't on the list of things that were in that drawer yesterday.
Shelby does a lot of these things where he really incriminates himself a lot. I mean, there are things that can be explained away, but he's kind of the guy who's like the easy target. Like if you want to choose the person who you think is the murderer as the easiest target, who has all this evidence against him, Shelby would be the guy you would pick, because he's just kind of he bumbles things, and he does things that he thinks at the time are smart, but it ends up being very incriminating to him. And this is just one of those things that he does. We also learn that Waldo is a very jealous person. So when Shelby and Laura start dating, how Waldo finds out is Laura and him usually have like dates where they see each other, they have dinner and all this stuff. Well, she starts calling him and saying that she can't make it because she's sick. And after she does this a few times, he starts thinking like something else is going on. So he ends up going to her apartment. He stands outside the apartment and he sees a silhouette of two people. So he sees a silhouette of Laura and then another guy.
Apartment building. The lights were on. It pleased me to know she was home, till I saw she was not alone. But I waited.
Another guy is like a writer or something, and he ends up writing a very scathy report about this guy in his writing, in his column that he writes, and they end up breaking it off because Waldo pretty much like wrote this scathing report. So whenever Laura tries to have another relationship or see another guy, Waldo ends up destroying it in some way because he's a very jealous person, extremely jealous. So now we're at the point where Laura's alive, and McPherson has to find out who is not only the murderer, but why. So why was this girl murdered? So you go through the normal film noir thing where you think it's this person and you think it's that person, and at the same time there's this scene where McPherson towards the end of the movie where he thinks that he wants to say that someone did it. He says, he gets a phone call. He said, yes, I know who did it. I'm going to bring them down to the precinct right now and question them. So he ends up bringing Laura down to the precinct to question her, but he doesn't, the feeling that I got was he doesn't actually think that it's her. He just wants to know if she was actually going to marry Shelby.
The main thing I want to know is why you pulled that switch on me about Carpenter. You told me last night you decided not to marry him.
Yes, I guess I did.
But today it was on again. Why?
Because there's a point in the movie where, were they actually engaged? Were they not engaged?
Killing Laura. Miss Hunt and I were going to be married this week, you know.
No, he doesn't know. And neither do I, or you, or anyone else alive.
What do you mean by that?
Laura had not definitely made up her mind to marry him.
The reason why she went to that her cabin was because I think he asked her to marry him and she said no. So were they actually going to get married? And he wants to get to this. This is the burning question, because of course he has a crush on her and he doesn't want to question her in front of everyone else, because then that'll be a little bit risky. Everyone will know that he has a crush on her. So he just takes her to the precinct and he drills her about, were you actually going to get married? And then that's all the interrogation. That's all he brought her down for. We're at the end of the movie. Detective McPherson is in Waldo's apartment. He notices that there's like an oddity with his clock. So he tries to open the clock, and then he is able to kind of punch part of the bottom of the clock in, and he notices there is a storage compartment inside the clock. So he thinks, okay, what was stored in that storage department? So then he goes over to Laura's apartment, and instead of breaking her clock, he says, how do you get in this clock? And then they finally figure out there's a button you push. They get in the clock, and inside the clock is a shotgun. This is the shotgun that eventually that killed Diane Redfern. But of course, Laura doesn't know anything about the gun. She didn't even know that the clock could open like that. Waldo is the one who bought the clock. There's only 2 clocks in the world that are like this. He's the only one that's going to know that this mechanism is like it is. So Waldo is the one who killed Diane Redfern. And the reason why he did this was because he thought he was killing Laura, because if he can't have Laura, then no one else can.
If McPherson weren't muscular and handsome in a cheap sort of way, you'd see through him in a second.
Waldo, I mean to be as kind about this as I know how. But I must tell you, you're the one who follows the same obvious pattern. First it was Jacoby, then Shelby, and now I
Laura,
suppose... I don't think we should see each other again.
And she was engaged to Shelby. He was very jealous about this, and he just decided that, no one else can have her. She has to be mine or no one else's. So he is... Detective Mark McPherson, when he sees this, he says, I'm going to go down to the precinct. I'm just going to leave the gun in the clock. Don't touch it because we don't need any fingerprints on it, but I'm going to go let them know, maybe call for some backup and get some guys down here. So he leaves the apartment, and then in another room, Waldo is hiding. He comes out of the room, he takes the shotgun, he puts 2 shells in it. He goes into Laura's room, and he says, Laura, if I can't have you, no one else will. I'm not going to let that Shelby guy have you. And now he's basically going to kill her.
I close this evening's broadcast with some favorite lines from Dowson. Brief life. They are not long, the weeping and the laughter, love and desire and hate.
So she's able to run up to him and point the gun away, and he shoots the ceiling, and McPherson realizes that Waldo is nowhere to be seen, so maybe he's in the apartment. He hears the gunshot, so he goes in there, and Laura runs to him, and he shoots Waldo, and Waldo kind of, as he's dying, shoots in the air, and then Waldo's dead. And that's basically the entire movie. This is considered one of the greatest film noirs of all time, from what I read. I thought this movie was really good. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I would consider it one of the greatest film noirs of our time personally, but like I said before, I don't necessarily enjoy every film noir. I'm very picky about these type of movies. Some of them are really hard to follow, like The Maltese Falcon for me was incredibly hard to follow. This one's a little bit easier, less characters, less kind of moving parts in it. So I thought this movie was really good. I really was amazed by Vincent Price, because I've never seen young Vincent Price before, and it was hard. I didn't even recognize him, to be perfectly honest. He says he's always considered this his greatest movie of all time. I guess I have to agree, because I haven't seen that many Vincent Price movies. This is probably the best one that I have seen. The acting all around is very good. This kind of movie with Vincent Price, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to just assume that he did it because he's the easy guy. He's the guy who bumbles everything, and like I say, he incriminates himself. But that's the kind of character who usually is not the killer in the movie. So right away, I kind of decided he wasn't going to be the killer, and I thought that it was going to be Waldo, because he was pretty, he was a jealous guy. He was protective. He wanted to be there when everyone was questioned. So the kind of guy who always wants to be around for those type of things. If someone commits a crime and then they go back to the crime later to watch what the police are doing, it's pretty. You're pretty much incriminating yourself there. So I thought it was Waldo the whole time. At the end of the movie, I was right. Not a lot of film noirs I'm able to do that, but this one I was able to guess who it was. So maybe that took a little bit away from the movie for me, but the cinematography is great. All the lighting is great. The direction is great. I was a little put off and a little confused by the fact that the police chief, or the Lieutenant Detective McPherson, was falling in love with someone who was dead just because he read her diaries. He heard a lot of people talking well about her. I don't know if I really believe that, or if I really am able to get into that part of the plot line. And as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, I'm not really sure that I am fully into this anymore. But besides that, everything was great. The ending was kind of a heart-pounding ending, where you really don't know if Laura is going to live or not. I was under the impression that maybe she would not live, and it would be like kind of a tragic ending. But that wasn't the ending that it was. So either way, it would have been fine. But the ending, I was definitely on the edge of my seat. It was very suspenseful ending. I don't know if I would say the entire movie was this way. And then, like I said, when Laura walked into the room and she was actually alive, I was, there's no way anyone could have predicted that. I was very shocked by that. I thought, like I said, I thought it was a dream at some point, that maybe she's not actually alive. And then I ended up being someone else. And then that's kind of the whole movie like flips on its side, where now we'd actually like really don't know what's going on, and that was a really good I thought that was a really good aspect of the movie, when she actually was alive and not dead. So all in all, I thought this movie was a really good movie, and I said I liked the fact that she was alive. That was something that I didn't see coming. And at the end of the movie, the fact that she lived, I thought the opposite would happen. But honestly, besides that, I don't know why this would be considered one of the greatest film noirs of all time. It's just it's a really good movie to me, but it's not like, I don't even think it's as good as like The Maltese Falcon, which I don't know if The Maltese Falcon is considered better than this, but I just thought that this was a really really good movie that, to me, it didn't really have anything that special to it except a young Vincent Price and good acting, and it's fine. But maybe I just don't watch enough film noirs at all. I like Out of the Past. That's probably my favorite film noir, which I still like it better than this. But all in all, like I said, the acting was good. The plot line was great. I just didn't, the whole he's in love with a dead girl thing, it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't flow with me. It didn't work for me. But that's just a personal opinion. Like I said, this has like a 90% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, so there are times when I can say maybe I'm wrong about this. But it just didn't work for me, that part of the plot line. But all in all, even with that section of the plot line not working for me, it's still a really decent movie. It's better than most. It's better than a lot of the ones that I've seen thus far. I will still give it an 8.5 out of 10. So thank you. I hope you join me for my next review, which is going to be National Velvet. Have a good day.